I'm bored. Let's debunk some bad faith commentary. All right, so we got the guys over at Film Threat talking about DEI, and I was watching this video and realized they are absolutely wrong about so much in this video. A lot of this is bad faith arguments and non sequiturs. So it's going to be a lot of fun. If you would like to do this yourself, all you need is common sense and access to Google. That's it. These guys are so easy to debunk. Let's get into the video.
Issa Rae defends DEI. I have a news story here, and let's get into it.
We're seeing a lot of rollbacks in Hollywood, despite knowing that diversity works and it makes money. How are you seeing it play out in real time?
I want to point out, I've got some numbers over here, just in case these guys want to go into this. When she's talking about DEI making money, there's a study at UCLA, we might even talk about it more in this video, that shows that 31 to 40% BIPOC media had the highest median domestic box office. Films that were cast with 20% BIPOC or less had the lowest median domestic box office. In 2025, UCLA saw basically the same pattern again. The 2025 theatrical report found films cast with more than 50% BIPOC had the highest mean opening weekend rank, 2-1, while films with casts with under 11% BIPOC had one of the lowest median domestic box offices, 21 million, and the weakest average opening weekend rank out of all of them. So, and there's even more here. We'll talk more about this as we get into it, but I just want to point out that this is probably what she's talking about, is this study from UCLA. And I think they've been doing one every year for like the last 3 years, if I'm right about that.
The C-suite as an executive, a creative executive.
I mean, I'm seeing it like just blatantly. People are scared and yeah, just not necessarily investing the same way that they would have before. Even executives who, are of color are also like tiptoeing. I'm like, well, I can't co-sign you because I'm gonna lose my job. Like, and that's scary to see, and sad to see, because it's kind of like a bad word now, even though we all know that was, we all know that typically when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, it is about giving people opportunities that would otherwise not have them, as opposed.
I want to point out for anybody watching the video, yes, DEI or DEIA is not about replacing someone with somebody else. It's about having a wider net of potential people working in certain fields or certain jobs by giving them options to come in and take part in the process that they otherwise would not have. That's what DEI or DEIA is in this regard. These guys would have you believe, and when I say these guys, I mean Film Threat and anybody else in the space, that DEI is some sort of like system where a white person or a man or a straight person are automatically taken out of the equation because of DEI. And that's just not the case. That's not how DEI functions in practice. So they might have you believing that, but that's not actually how it works.
To pity hires and pity shows and the like. And it's kind of just, it's changed meanings and has become a bad word, but it hasn't affected what we do and who I create for and what our company creates for and who we prioritize. And it never will. It's just, you have to be kind of smarter about how you package it and market it, and so do. And that's what executives are also getting smarter about too, of just like, it's not a show about a Black woman, it's a show about class, and as icky as that might feel, it gets the show sold. It's, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Seen this clip, Alan? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Look, DEI, if DEI were giving a voice to someone who, in a group that needs to be heard, that's one thing. It's saying.
No, that's the only thing. That's the only thing. We don't need you to make like some caricature of like what DEI or DEIA is. DEI, if we're talking about in the workplace, the practice is generally about reducing biases and access, recruitment, retention, advancement. It's about not overlooking the people who would typically be overlooked because of a racial or gender or orientation bias. That's what that does. So it's not like whatever it is you're trying to make it sound like. That's not what DEI or DEIA is. Just want to put that out there.
Okay, I'm willing to listen to another story or listen to another voice. But then she goes on. But then people saw it as a pity hire, and she was right there. DEI was not about bringing out new stories from real storytellers.
So you're saying it is a pity hire? That's just an insult. That's just an insult. It's you're presenting what you're framing here is factual stuff with no proof. We all know that pity hire is derogatory. It's a label. There's almost no evidence of pity hiring. It just there's like, give me an example of someone that was hired where the studio has been like, we hired them because we felt sorry for them. It just doesn't happen. I know these guys fantasize about it, but that's just not something, we don't see that. We don't even hear stories about that.
It was about pity hires. It was about getting someone in the room just because of the way they looked or what their gender was when they were not qualified.
Proof of that.
To be there. In order for diversity to work, you have to be qualified to be there. You have.
So who specifically is unqualified, and what is the standards of those qualifications here? Like, give an example. Any example. There's no evidence. This, like, when you guys watch my videos, whether you're watching me live on the Copecast or you're watching me here in a pre-recorded video, one thing you will notice, and this is a pattern with these guys, is there's almost, I won't say always, almost a standard for them not to have evidence. They love to smear people. They love to make people look as if they're unqualified or their credentials are not up to snuff or whatever it might be. They do this thing where they treat someone's identity as presumptive proof of incompetence. That's it. That's the game. You hire a woman, clearly you did it because you felt sorry for her. She's unqualified for the job. It doesn't matter how many years she's been in the industry. It doesn't matter what she's done. Clearly, that's the reason. And this is what they do with everyone that they don't like. Everyone in the industry they do not like. They are going to come up with some convenient reason why they're incapable of doing their job. And then they're going to try to connect that to some form of manufactured advancement in the industry without any proof whatsoever. It's prejudice disguised as merit talk without any proof whatsoever.
To be able to tell a story, you have to have a story worth listening to or worth telling. But what DEI did was just say, you're black, you're hired. Congratulations. You're gay, you're hired. Congratulations. You're a woman, you're hired. Congratulations.
Provide proof of this. Give an example. Say, you're black, you're hired. And here's the example of that. Or you're gay, you're hired. Here's an example of that happening. If you're not providing an example, then this is a straw man argument. You're giving no evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, that Hollywood hiring decisions literally work that way. You're just saying it. You're on a podcast. You've got a little bit of clout in the industry. And it's so rhetorically effective because it's vivid and it feels real, but it's still made up. And it's so fucking ugly because it invents a cartoon version of what DEI is. So then you can perform outrage for it and get people in your audience to be outraged about it. And it's just disgusting. It's so gross. And again, it's so easy to catch these guys in it because they repeat the same talking points over and over and over again. And people don't call them out. People don't say anything. They just let them do it. That's not me. I hate liars. I hate fucking liars. I hate when people do this. Misinformation, disinformation on purpose. And when it comes to these guys and channels like this, they know that they are being misleading. They know that it's not true. but they have no one pushing back against them in any real meaningful way.
As opposed to, what do you have to say? You know, most of these DEI hires don't know how to tell stories, don't know how to direct, don't know how to write.
Defamation. Let's just generalize about them. Again, no factual bias presented. It's just stereotyping professionals in the industry with no proof whatsoever. It just doesn't. If you want the audience that you're preaching to accept a term like DEI hire or pity hire, if you want them to accept that as real, then you can't use it as shorthand for like untalented or undeserving, doesn't belong there. You have to give them more than that. What you're trying to make me believe and other people in your audience is that if someone is hired due to DEI, every single time they're hired, they are incapable of telling stories. They are incapable of doing the job that they're hired for just because of DEI. But you have no proof of that because you can't even prove that the framework you're establishing for the hiring process happens the way you say it happens. So how can I believe that whatever end result you get to about how successful somebody who was hired under DEI was, before we can even get to that, you have to establish that the hiring process that you've created in this scenario is real. And you can't even do that.
But I'll tell you this, there are plenty of diverse people with diverse backgrounds who know how to direct, who know how to write. And you refuse for some reason to hire them because they don't fall in line with you 100% politically.
That sounds real convenient. So there's this magical world out there where there's all of these extremely talented, diverse people that they could hire that fill in that quota that these guys have said Hollywood has, this DEIA quota that Hollywood has. They can fill that quota, but instead of doing that, they choose to hire unqualified people instead of just not making the project. Because that seems real savvy in the business world, to commit to a project and then ignore all of the most talented people to waste money on hiring untalented people instead of just not doing it. Instead of just not making the movie or the TV show.
So it's just one of those, where people are getting the argument wrong, especially the people who are supporting DEI. It's, you got to come to the table with the tools in hand in order to make it work.
But you're not proving that people who are hired through DEI practices are incapable of doing it. See, that's the problem. You're not connecting the dots. So magically, DEI just so happens to only include untalented people every time. And it just so happens that anytime something fails that includes a person who is not a white man who happens to be straight, then those people are immediately called DEI, and then you just connect the dots together to untalented, undeserving, incapable, and all of it, it's just a cycle that continues to repeat. That's all it is with these guys. It's so lazy, so predictable.
Well, I'll just say that, there is a reason people use the term that's a DEI blank, and it's meant as a derisive term.
Yeah,
because I think people are tired of it. That people are tired of race swaps.
Okay.
In IP, people are tired of inauthentic storytelling. And by that I mean, storytelling where you see a period piece from London of a certain era, and it's naturally diverse, like a Benetton ad, when we know that's was not really historically the case.
All right, so what he's doing here is he's doing vibes-based complaints about fake history. That's what he's doing. Contrary to popular belief, none of these movies or TV shows that come out follow history 100%. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. Mainly because we just don't have every single conversation that ever happened between every single person in that period. So we know like the beats of that particular time in history, but we don't always know every single thing that happened. So they fill in the blanks there. So already we have strayed away from like the actual accuracy of history, which is why this argument is vibes based, because it's not really a argument about factuality. It's just about what you prefer. When you say that takes you out of the story, or it doesn't feel natural, doesn't feel real or whatever, that's subjective. And when you say that wasn't historically the case, as a factual claim, it's just a weak claim. It's just a weak claim because you're like, hey, this one thing in history, this happened this way. Everything else has to also feel factually real, even though we don't have that information. I think we're a little bit over halfway through this video, so I want to steel man a part of his statement here because I think it's really important and I feel like doing it. The idea that London historically is some white person's utopia and that diversity is automatically fake and wrong and incorrect, like that's just false. We know for a fact there is a documented black presence in Britain, London, in the late 18th century. English Heritage notes estimates of at least a little over 10,000 black people in London and thousands more elsewhere in Britain during those time periods. And the National Archives maintains an extensive record on black and Asian histories in Britain. So that's just, his whole statement there is misleading and has holes in it. And it doesn't mean, like, I'm not suggesting that every period piece gets every casting choice right. But diverse casting in historical London is inherently inauthentic is just a false statement. It's just not true.
And it just takes you out of the story. You know, we saw some examples of both good and bad when we were at CinemaCon. Yeah. We saw a teaser for Werewolf. It looks very authentic to the era, you know?
Not diverse.
It wasn't diverse. Yeah. Doesn't take you out of it. We know.
Oh my God. These guys in treating whiteness as the default aesthetic of authenticity and pretending that that is the neutral stance. It's crazy. I'm sorry. It's crazy. Whiteness as default has been the issue in media for a long time. That's part of the problem. We're talking about a movie about a werewolf, and you're arguing about racial authenticity in a movie that already has broken the rule of reality by being about a werewolf. And again, this is just preference. Doesn't take you out of it is not an argument. It means that this version doesn't match your expectations or what you wanted out of it or what you prefer in these kinds of movies. That's all that means. It's some assumption that like less diversity makes it more authentic. That's such a lazy, reductive argument. And it's a subjective argument. It doesn't even hold up in any sort of standard other than you don't like it. That's it. And it also doesn't mean the movie's going to be good. Because remember, we're arguing about quality here. DEI being unqualified and incapable of the jobs that they're doing. So we're arguing about quality. Please explain to me how the quality of the movie automatically gets elevated because they have all white people in it. I would love for that argument to be somewhere in the video. Because I can name hundreds of movies, maybe even thousands of movies that were full of white people that are bad movies. So default white as the neutral doesn't equal good movie. So I don't even know what this argument means.
I'll give you another example. I'll give you an example of good. The opening of the Paramount presentation opened with this short film. Basically, it was the stars of Paramount, and they're basically on a movie set. And this whole thing was about the fact that Paramount is a real production studio. You're gonna
Okay.
make your movie at Paramount, and it was.
All right.
Long story short, it was a great video. Everyone was impressed by it. It was amazing, and John M. Chu directed it.
Okay.
You wouldn't know who had directed that, and you wouldn't have cared. But yeah, somehow an Asian man.
So you wouldn't wait. So the argument is that the person working on the other side of the camera needs to be good at doing their job, and that the problem is they're diverse. And that's the issue. But here you're saying that you wouldn't even know who's on the other side of the camera. You wouldn't even know. So what's the issue? What's the problem? Why do you care so much about whether the person behind the camera is a black person, a white person, an Asian person, a man, a woman, gay, straight, trans, whatever? Why would you even care about that if you're saying nobody? Like, let's run this back. I'm like, this seems like it defeats the severity of your argument about DEI.
It was amazing, and John M. Chu directed it. You wouldn't know who had directed that, and you wouldn't have cared.
You wouldn't have cared. You wouldn't have cared. I really wish these guys would just pay attention to what they're saying and understand that when you say we wouldn't care about who that person is, all that tells me is that your outrage is fake and your argument is fake. Now, let's get back to him tokenizing John M. Chu. I want to let this sit with you guys for a second because I don't like tokenization. I hate tokenization. There's a few things I hate. I hate liars. I hate tokenization. I hate when somebody's like, oh, I couldn't be homophobic because I have a gay friend. That kind of shit. So I hate when people use that as a gotcha trying to back up whatever bigoted thing they're doing in the moment. So let's hear what, and by the way, I want to point out, like, just to make this argument clear to everyone, yes, a gay person can be bigoted towards gay people. I'm using this as a reference because people talk about when I call out white supremacy and Christian nationalism and all this shit, when I'm saying this, that how could someone who isn't white be a part of that system? Because the system is an ideology. It's not based on your actual skin color or background. It's based on an ideology. And as long as you're willing to be a part of that movement and that ideology of supremacy, they're going to take you because then you become their token. If I were to all of a sudden jump on the side of the hate channels, the outrage channels, and start talking about how gay people shouldn't be in movies and TV shows, and there's DEI, and gay people are bad, XYZ. If I started doing that, I would tokenize myself in that group. I would become one of their tokens, and then they would use me as a validation argument for everything they're saying. So yes, someone who is a part of a community can absolutely be negative and harmful to that community. They can. Before anybody jumps in my comment section asking me about, well, what if somebody's not white? It doesn't matter if they're not white. If they're a man and they're arguing in defense of men, then that's all that matters, right? That's all they say. If you're a woman and you're arguing in the defense of men, in the case of like DEI, then it's the same thing. It's the same situation. Race, gender, sexuality, it doesn't matter. As long as you are arguing the ideology, they don't care what you look like. Point blank, period. Let's see what you have to say about John M. Chu.
It was a great video. Everyone was impressed by it. It was amazing, and John M. Chu directed it. You wouldn't know who had directed that, and you wouldn't have cared. But yeah, somehow an Asian man who is actually a good director made an actual good movie.
No.
Somehow an Asian man, an Asian man who is actually a good director made an actual good movie. So we're supposed to be surprised that an Asian guy was talented enough to make something that you said nobody would even care if he made. I would also say this is probably a non sequitur because you're using John's success to imply merit existing outside of DEI, but that doesn't prove that DEI causes bad work. Yeah, so that's a non sequitur. It's like saying, I'm not biased. Here's one minority creator that I like. It doesn't rescue your statements. It also, again, doesn't provide evidence that DEI immediately means incapable of doing the job. So took me a minute to unpack that, but we got there.
It was like, first of all, it's a short film about 5 minutes starring Tom Cruise, and it was only shown at CinemaCon. They spent probably $5-10 million on it,
Okay.
and it looked amazing. And yeah, that was someone who's very talented making a short film to blow you away and get you excited about Paramount.
What does that have to do with DEI? John M. Chu being a talented Asian director doesn't prove that DEI hires are untalented. I don't understand what is it that this doesn't prove anything.
And what's coming in the future. And it was amazing. So, yeah, I mean, she's defending it, but I think I think you have to look at, and the statement that the commentator makes at the very beginning of the clip, well, it's proved that it makes money. No, it's not proved that it makes money. That is she is starting that on a false premise.
No, you're being too absolute with that. That's not a false statement. Matter of fact, I have the UCLA studies pulled up so I can look at the numbers over here. So, and we already talked about them earlier. So it's not a false statement. They do make money. If you wanted to correctly critique this, Chris, you'd say something like, not every diverse project makes money, or diversity alone doesn't guarantee success. But saying completely false is just as bad as what you're accusing her of doing in the beginning of the video. UCLA and USC both push back against this blanket claim. McKinsey's Hollywood work argued there's better representation and billions of dollars in additional revenue in this UCLA study, which, by the way, I will share. Let me see if I have it here on my screen. I can share what the study looks like so you guys can see what it is. So if you want to go look at it, it is UCLA Hollywood Diversity Report 2024. And there is some updated versions of this that have information about 2025 and 2026, which disprove what these guys are saying. Again, I always bring the receipts with what I'm saying. I'm not like these guys where I just say stuff. If I say it, I either have read it somewhere or it is information that's right in front of me while I'm watching their videos. Let's get back to their video.
Completely false.
No, in fact, it loses money. We've seen it over and over.
In some cases, it loses money.
Loses a lot of money.
Again, yes, some projects with diverse cast flop or underperform, and some don't. Some non-diverse projects flop constantly. So to claim DEI or diversity categorically loses a lot of money would require these guys to provide some sort of comparative evidence isolating diversity as the necessary cause. And you can't do that. I'm telling you, it's impossible. You cannot nail down one thing when you're talking about DEI and say, this is the one thing that always guarantees it's not going to make money. That doesn't exist. This is just cherry picking. They're saying, oh, look at all these failures, ignore all the hits, and then pretending that their ideology explains all of it. Get woke, go broke, right? They're saying this, but again, these guys, no matter how many of these clips I watch, no matter how many of them I watch, provide no actual evidence for any of the claims they make. None.
Yeah, so, this is good. It's never enough. This proves no matter how much progress is enough, you're not progressing hard enough. Progress harder.
Yeah.
Even
What do you mean, bro? Brush your hair, please. Sorry.
though when you look at movies from the 80s and the 90s that I grew up with, they were organically diverse for the era.
Yeah, remember in the 80s and 90s when black filmmakers actually made good movies?
Are you suggesting that current filmmakers who are black all make flops? All of them? It sounds a bit racist to me. But this is essentially nostalgia bait. And some contradictions here. They're praising black filmmakers from 40 years ago while attacking current inclusive efforts without actually addressing any of the structural barriers those filmmakers faced then or now. No explanation. And organic diversity, the word organic, it triggers me a little bit. I'll be honest, it does trigger me. Organic as a word doesn't make a lot of sense when we're talking about a project where people are cast and scripts are written and things like that occur. It's just, it's not applicable to most of the things that these guys try to apply it to. It's more like subjective. Like it's them saying diverse in ways that I don't personally resent. If it doesn't take me out of my cultural comfort zone, that's essentially what they're saying. If I had to wrap it up into a little package, let's continue.
Well, they made more authentic movies and original story. And now,
so you would know what an authentic black filmmaking story is. You would know what an authentic gay story is. You would know what an authentic trans woman story is. How can you say authentic when we're talking about movies created with culture in mind? The actual audacity and ego of Chris Gore in this moment is wild to me. It is completely off the rails.
Their culture to their times. They were the storytellers.
Even successful black filmmakers like, Ryan Coogler.
Wait. So there are black filmmakers who are making movies currently that are successful. But I thought that that's not possible. That it was only possible like 40 years ago. I didn't think that was possible. Now it is, I guess.
And now
to their culture, to their times. They were the storytellers.
Even successful black filmmakers like, Ryan Coogler has to hang on a known IP to be able to make a TV show like The X-Files. How about just call it something else? Free yourself from the burden of all the...
This is very selective. So you're blaming Ryan Coogler for Hollywood's risk-averse reliance on nostalgic IP. Didn't you just a minute ago wax poetic about how much you loved movies from that era, from back then? But now it's Ryan Coogler's fault that the studios greenlight IPs that come from different time periods. This is a industry-wide problem. It's not a DEI problem. So now we've jumped off of the DEI pathway. We're on another pathway altogether. And they're saying, okay, here's this problem that exists for everyone, but now we're going to rope black people into it. And we're going to rope DEI into it. So you're trying to combine two things together to again, prove that DEI is an issue while still not providing any sort of substantial evidence of anything you're talking about. Studios lean on known brands with white creators, male creators. This is just the reality of it. So singling out diverse creators for participating in IP-driven franchises, the IP-driven system is hypocritical unless you're going to apply that same criticism universally. Don't act like it suddenly becomes an offensive problem when a black creator touches an IP that you know from back in the day. It's a problem that everyone deals with. So it shouldn't even be in this argument because all you're trying to do is diminish Ryan Coogler's success as a filmmaker by including a problem that exists for other people and going, well, look, here's this problem that exists for everyone, but he's a black filmmaker and he's successful. In order for me to make my argument, I have to bring over something else that exists for everyone in the industry and combine it with this anti-DEI video that I'm making.
The canon of the original X-Files series and just make something new about two investigators, make them whatever color you want, and tell something new, a new story. But I think that's why people look at it. It's like, take a thing I know that I love, replace it, and make it more diverse.
But is this criticism applied to white people, Chris? Why is it you're going Ryan Coogler, this thing I love, they make it diverse equals bad? Like, apply this criticism across the board, because DEI is not the reason for this. DEI is not the reason for this. It's such a weird combination of arguments.
And that somehow means it's better. Always in almost every case. I think in every case, it's worse. It's worse.
It's not. Again, an absolute statement. In every case, it's worse. Bro, you argued about them making statements earlier that you thought were a little bit too hyperbolic, and you're doing the same thing.
And so people associate that with quality, and now it's like it might be the best thing ever, and they don't even want to try it.
So please explain to me how that helps your argument. You're saying that these projects, these revised or revivals or remakes or whatever, that have black directors attached to them, that cast a diverse cast in them, you said a second ago, they're always a failure. They're always bad. You put this absolute tag on it. But then you said they could actually be good, but people just don't want to watch them because of the fact that they feel burned by other projects they didn't like. So it's not always going to be a bad project. It's not always a bad thing. It's not always something that you don't like. It just means that the public perception of it is that it's going to be bad. And who do you think is responsible for driving the public in that direction? Who do you think that is? Could it possibly be all of the guys on the internet who are constantly complaining about diversity all the time, even when it's not warranted, or trying to make an argument work from two different standpoints in order to disparage a black creator because they don't have any real evidence of anything they're talking about? And so they make the public resent this stuff because you've told the public that white people are being replaced. You've told the public that DEI is taking their jobs. You have done all these things, not the actual people making the films. They've not done this. You guys have. So I wonder whose fault it is that people feel so jaded and angry about diverse projects. It's clearly not quality because you just say it could be the best thing ever and they still wouldn't watch it. I know this was a long one, but I felt like I needed to dive into this one a little bit more because there was almost 0 times in this video where anything they were saying was based in fact. Like they just weren't providing any evidence for anything. And the stuff they were saying, I would say at least 80% of the time was wrong, or it was subjective and didn't require any sort of like policing or correcting or debunking or whatever. These guys are part of the problem with internet discourse around these things because it's so, I'm going to use this term again, it's low IQ nonsense. It's arguing about things without totally addressing the issues or looking at them from a perspective that fixes any problems. It's saying, hey, this thing sucks, and it just sucks because it sucks. Like, there's no real rhyme or reason for the stuff they're saying. Statistics prove them wrong. We know that. They had to create straw man arguments and non sequiturs and adding in things to like make it seem like something is bad when it's not. They said that black filmmakers in the 80s and 90s were making these movies that were great. And then when we get to current modern times, they're like, well, Ryan Coogler's making movies, but great. But asterisk on that, it's because of some other reason. He's attached to some franchise IP, which, by the way, I didn't even think about this while he was saying this. Ryan Coogler has made very successful movies not connected to any major IPs, but you didn't address that. You didn't talk about that. You just ignored it because you have a narrative to spin. These guys have an ideology. They want you to think DEI is some secret weird thing that's happening. It's not. It's very, like, honestly, it's really easy to explain. You have a room full of people where everybody gets an opportunity to try something. That's all it is. Literally, it's like there was a point in time where you had a room, only certain people were allowed in that room. Everybody else was outside the room because no one was checking to see if anybody else wanted to be a part of whatever they were doing. What DEI does now is it opens the doors to that room so everybody can come in and have an opportunity to put their best foot forward. That's all DEI is. These guys want you to believe it's some boogeyman coming to steal your cake. It's not. It's fake. And these guys are part of the problem.